I remember coming home for like a winter break one time. And again, I was around that 220 and people were like,
Oh, okay, I see you. Man, look at you. You're getting big.
what's up guys? So today I want to talk about bulking up naturally and kind of the realities of that for most people and how your overall size can influence that depending on, if you're looking at pictures versus in person. Today's video I'm actually doing on an iPhone 12 Pro. So I want to hear from you guys how the audio and visual quality is compared to some of my other videos. So I'm trying this one out. So I saw a post on Facebook actually by Jason Blaha talking about how every fitness influencer is probably a good 3 inches shorter than they say they are. And this is something I've talked with a few people about, and I do find it kind of funny because I think just in general, people tend to lie about their heights, especially in the, influencer fitness scene. A lot of people lie about their heights. So I'm 6'1", and being 6'1" allows me to be kind of like a good gauge of who is actually below or above 6 feet tall. And you find that a lot of people in fitness are relatively short. I mean, I honestly feel like the average height in the fitness industry has to be at least 2 inches shorter than what the national average is. And there's a reason behind that. I mean, people will say about Napoleonic complex, but I mean, could that be part of it? Sure, I guess. But I think part of it is because people gravitate towards what they're successful at. So you don't tend to see a lot of really tall bodybuilders. Now in strongmen, you do see that because they can be very big and powerful. But from an aesthetic standpoint, you don't tend to see that as often. Obviously, we have some examples, but I mean, when you look at Ronnie Coleman, who was one of the taller guys, he was only 5'10". If you look at the current lineup, most of these guys range from 5'3". I think Hadi Chupin and on this the pro stage is 5'3", 5'4". Not much taller than maybe 5'8". But even in natural bodybuilding, you see this too, because it kind of condenses everything. In natural bodybuilding, you can have a 16-inch arm, which on me looks super skinny, and you can see that on somebody who's 5'5", and it looks great, right? And especially if they're lean, and there's different things you can do with, photos and angles and all of that. So all of that plays into that. But what I wanted to talk about is kind of the reality of dieting versus bulking up, especially if you are natural, especially if you are a taller individual. And so we kind of live in this current world of Instagram and everybody's got to look good and lean all the time. And that's okay at times. If you follow my Instagram, you will see that I had pictures from this summer where I was down to about 181 to 183 in that range. And I had a lot of pictures where I was showing my abs and I looked quite lean. Now, while I think I did look good in those pictures, I was getting smaller and smaller in real life. There's a joke that says, okay, pick 2 of the 3, big, lean, and natural. You can have 2, but you can't have all 3 of those, right? And there's some exceptions to that. I'd say if you throw in tall, there's almost no exceptions where you could have all 4 of those, right? I mean, again, very, very rare exceptions to that. But that's just kind of the reality. It kind of depends on what game you're looking to play. Now, I will show some pictures of when I was bulked up. And I'll even show some where I was really bulked up, and you would see these pictures and you'd be like, this is just a fat guy who's never worked out. I mean, I don't hold it well. I have some friends who hold 20% body fat really well. And I mean, they just look like big guys, especially in person. I start to get the fatter face and, I don't hold it in the best areas, but especially when you see the pictures, it's oh man, this is not pretty. I'll show one where I was probably 220 or something like that. But here's the thing, in person, and that's one of the major things I want to talk about, is in person, it's a totally different reality. This kind of touches back on the bear mode video I made a year or 2 ago with AlphaDestiny and Jeff Nippert. But again, these are short guys, right? So I actually think they could get away with being leaner and still looking like they lift. Both of those guys are only 5'5", right? It's very hard to look too skinny at 5'5", if you have any reasonable amount of muscle. Both of those guys could probably get nearly contest lean and still look awesome, right? Even in person. But the taller you are, the less that's going to apply, and you tend to just look skinnier when you get really lean. So again, I'll incorporate some of those pictures. For those of you who are not concerned with Instagram and how that looks, you might want to consider that most people are going to consider you to be bigger and more impressive even when you're actually bulked up and fatter. I mean, honestly, when I am bulked up, even if I'm pretty soft, that's when I get most of the compliments. I remember coming home for a winter break one time. And again, I was around that 220 and people were like,
Oh, okay, I see you. Man, look at you. You're getting big.
and it to me, I felt I mean, I knew I was relatively big. I mean, I think my arms were about 17.5 inches at the time, which for me was pretty big. I was putting up pretty good numbers in the gym, but it was just not a good look. Like, I would not have really wanted to take my shirt off around many people. I mean, that's just kind of the reality of it. And then again, that's where the height is an advantage, because now if you're looking at somebody who's 6'1", 220, 230, a lot of times people just see general size. And so they might not even see the guy who's really short. Like, I remember Greg Nuckols mentioning this one time, that he met Kai Green and he was like, you know, it's kind of hard. Like, you know, he was huge, but it was almost hard to be impressed because he was just so tiny. And I can kind of relate to that, because I've met a number of people in the fitness industry now, and most of them were quite short. And so even though, again, in pictures or maybe their lifts are super impressive, and it's not at all to take away from them, obviously, I mean, you can't control that. But, you know, if you look at somebody like maybe like Gunter Schillerkamp, who was just massive. I mean, I think the guy was actually over 6 feet tall, competing on stage at like 300 pounds. I mean, that was crazy. But some of the naturals, you know, if you can fill out that frame, it's really impressive. Do I like bulking or cutting more? I always liked bulking more. I obviously felt a lot better. Libido was higher. You could eat more food. But also, I mean, this shouldn't drive you, but there was certainly more ego validation when I was bulking up compared to when I was dieting. Now, the fact that I have an Instagram account now, I guess there's actually a decent amount of validation if that was something I was looking for from Instagram and things like that. I don't care too much about that. Still, it's something to keep in mind that, you know, if you are natural, and even for the enhanced guys, really, as you diet down, you can look skinnier and skinnier. And so I'm actually going to put in a picture here of, if you guys have seen him on the podcast, Paul Canoe. Paul Canoe is super impressive, really great physique. He just recently became an IFBB pro. So if you look at pictures of him, if you look at videos of him, he really does look like that. I mean, he looks freaky, right? And, you know, if you want to like put like a picture of me next to him, it's like just totally different worlds, right? I mean, even if like we were on stage together, totally different worlds. However, I will also note that he is a great example of not just a lot of muscle, but just perfect shape, perfect symmetry, and everything that just flows really well together. So while seeing pictures of us shows a super dramatic difference, seeing us in person might just show a slightly less dramatic difference. I'll actually post a picture of us just doing like a, you know, joking pose down. And this is when I was relatively lean. So I think I was probably maybe 183 to 184 in this picture. And I think he was probably a similar weight, but he's like 5'7" maybe. And while again, there's a dramatic difference in our physiques here, you can see that between me being several inches taller and us actually flexing there, the size is not as much as you might think in a picture, you know. And again, I want to be clear, I don't hold a candle to him physique-wise, but if you looked at that picture, especially to a totally untrained eye might just say, oh, here's just two big guys who are lifting together, cool. But if you look at the pictures individually of us, like me posing him, it's just like totally worlds apart. So I think that's something to keep in mind if you're somebody who looks at people on Instagram or looks at individual photos that are out of context, or even just on a bodybuilding stage because they're not around other individuals who are just maybe like bulked up, or, you know, what their actual size is. It's very easy to see that and think, holy crap, they look so good, I could never look like that. But for most of us who are not competing, does that look really matter that much? And so I just kind of wanted to touch on here the realities of bulking up for most people, is that while from a fitness influencer standpoint, it seems worse and nobody wants to show those pictures, I actually find it much more rewarding. And you know, it's when I can put up the best numbers, it's when I can eat more, it's when I can feel good in the gym. So of course my light goes out right as I'm finishing up the video, but that's pretty much all I had to say on the topic, guys. Let me know what you thought about both the audio and visual quality here, this topic, and if you prefer bulking or cutting. Again, for me, I think that's how you're gonna live most of your life, is in that maintenance or bulking phase. And so I think for most people, it's best to get used to not being lean all the time. I think it is more rewarding. And I think the realities are that when you bulk up, you're probably gonna get more compliments. And honestly, if you look at just kind of like the general population, there are a lot of people that we would probably say, geez, that person is almost just kind of fat, that a typical person actually considers them really big and bulky and even impressive. And you find that even more with age, I think a lot of times, because it's the norm to be at higher body fats. So they just see bigger guys. Conversely, you know, when I was maybe like 14 getting into this, if you didn't have abs, I wasn't impressed at all, regardless of how big you are. So part of that is a factor as well. Always appreciate a like and subscribe, comment down below on your thoughts. Thanks.